Hello, and good morning, everyone. We really appreciate the privilege of your time this morning. Again, my name's Scott Yeager. I'm the Outreach Manager here at Pennie. I'll be joined today by Hannah Turner, as well as several other Pennie staff that'll be here to address questions that you may have regarding not only our content, but some of the updates we're going to share with you. To start, I did want to mention again that all of our sessions for the community partner work group are recorded and posted as resources. We'll take a look at that in a moment. But also, all attendees are muted. However, because we're on MS Teams, you can post your questions in the chat actively throughout our session today. Pennie staff will be there to help address some of those questions. The questions that we might not get to, fear not, we also download the chat and respond to those questions and post that Q&A as part of our community work groups. So let's talk a little bit about today's agenda. We've got a lot of information. We're going to go through some updates for community partners. We're going to talk about something very important. At the beginning, you may have noticed that Pennie has now transitioned from a trademark to a registered trademark, and that's something that we're going to discuss in depth and detail. So hopefully you'll find that valuable. We're also going to talk about a hot topic, and that's our assister and broker training. We're going to provide you with some updates today with regard to both of them. Also, we're going to talk about a few operational updates, annual income verification, as well as loss of minimum essential coverage, SEP, special enrollment period. And then we are going to talk about a topic that is both timely and very important for a lot of Pennie customers, and that's the transition from Pennie to Medicare. So with that being said, we're going to provide a few community partner updates here very quickly. Some of this information we mentioned during last month's session, but it's very important to keep in mind that, we want your feedback. We need your feedback as a community partner to help us improve as an organization, to help us improve our service to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And anytime you have a suggestion, an idea, through our community partners webpage, you can actually submit that idea or that suggestion for us to take back and consider here at the exchange. So again, we value that feedback. I also wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of Pennie's annual report for 2021. It has been posted to our newsroom page, and it's got a lot of great information in it, not only about our service to the Commonwealth, but information about those who we serve and our vision for where we'd like to see Pennie go in 2022, 2023. So please make sure that you review that, share it with anybody who might want a little more information about Pennie. Also, as a resource on our agency toolkit, which we'll also talk about here momentarily, there is a guide for customers that can help them designate their Pennie broker or assister. That particular guide is really important, especially as we head into open enrollment. So if you haven't had a chance to review it, please stop by. Also, in terms of resource pages, Pennie has recently gone through and updated our resource page for assisters. If you visit the site, you'll see a couple resources, especially under the Get Certified section. You'll see the actual process for new assisters to become an assister, as well as the assister registration guide, which again, thank you Cognosante, Mendoza, and everyone who put a lot of work into that. It's been a pleasure to share that with our new assisters. Also, you'll see that the structure of the page is a little different. Marketing materials and collateral for the toolkit are available for assisters throughout Pennsylvania, as well as manuals and job aids. Really easy to connect with. Last month, we had mentioned in relationship with the Department of Human Services here in Pennsylvania, Pennie and DHS are sort of raising the awareness with our partners throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania about the ending of the public health emergency. And to receive timely updates, timely information, we're encouraging our community partners to sign up and become more or less a Pennie helper. Pennie and DHS will, when the public health emergency nears its ending, we'll be sending out a lot of great information and updates that you can share with individuals in your community that may be of interest in their insurance options through Pennie. Also, I wanted to mention that on August 18th, which is just next week, Pennie will also have our board meeting. And I wanted to make sure that you had the resource link for that board meeting. In addition, I'd just like to remind everyone that these community partner work group sessions, they are recorded. They are, posted along with the agenda, the meeting deck as a resource, and our question and answer documents. So on to our first topic today that, again, is something that we're very excited to share with you, and that is Pennie's logo training. Pennie, as you can see, we have migrated away from a trademark to a registered trademark now, and that's a great thing. But that also puts us, in a position where we have to protect our brand. And all Pennie logos must be requested and approved through Pennie and provided from a Pennie source. Typically, that's our marketing and communications department. The standard Pennie logo, marks, monograms, slogans cannot be recreated or edited outside of the Pennie organization. All logos must include the registered symbol, which is the little R there that you see. Some Pennie marks recently became registered. Old logos include the trademark symbol and will need to be updated with the registered symbol. That's a process for us, but we're making sure that things get updated as we can update them. So when writing the Pennie name in materials or publications, the first mention of Pennie should be with that registered trademark symbol, and it needs to have that symbol. All Pennie logo or brand use needs need to follow our style guide. You can find our style guide right at our newsroom, and there's a resource link here for that. Again, this deck is going to be provided as a resource after our meeting today. Now, Pennie certified brokers have a logo that's been created for them. The Pennie certified broker logos are available for all Pennie certified brokers who've completed the 2023 Pennie broker training, either as a new broker or as one of our recertifying brokers. You can access the broker logo by requesting it at pennie.com/request support. The Pennie certified broker logo can be used by brokers in your external facing materials, things like email signatures, websites, business cards, marketing materials, etc., to show customers that you're a certified broker through the marketplace. For the assisters who are attending this session, we are also in development right now, a Pennie certified logo for assisters. But again, that's still in development. We'll have an update for you on that very soon. In terms of logo training, how you can help as a broker, Pennie certified broker logos cannot be used without permission or recreated for any reason. If you come across a website or printed material with the Pennie logo that's not correct, or from a site that is not using the logo appropriately, please reach out by email to Pennie Broker Resources, and that's brokers@pennie.com. The penalty for incorrect use of Pennie's logo, and this is very important. The penalty may include removing consent for that particular broker to use Pennie's branding moving forward. And again, we can't thank you enough for, helping us secure our brand and to make sure that Pennie certified brokers are being represented appropriately. Now I'm going to go through our toolkit because many of you are familiar with Pennie's toolkit. It's a place on our website where any community partner, broker, assister can actually download or order Pennie's material. And we will send those materials to you, to your office locations, hospitals, health centers, etc. And we have a lot of approved educational materials and content available for you in that toolkit. Requesting the materials is also very easy. You select the materials that you'd like us to send you. We have materials available in different languages. We have materials that most definitely speak to general audiences, specific audiences, and I have a couple examples here of that. But again, we will send these materials to you. And, again, we appreciate you being in a position where you can help us get people protected. Here's an example of a new piece that was just created by Pennie's marketing and communications team. It is probably one of the best general pieces that I could recommend to anyone, whether you would be from a hospital, health center, an insurance agency, if you're an assister working in the community. If you are attending an event where you'll be engaging the general public, and we affectionately refer to this as our waiting room flyer. This flyer has a lot of really great information. So from a general perspective, you can order materials like this and others that are, in fact, again, Pennie approved and branded appropriately so that you can use them in your work. We also have a small business flyer. Speaking of specific populations that we created recently, because a lot of individuals and sole proprietors, small business owners, small precision manufacturers in Pennsylvania, they may want to consider, again, Pennie doesn't provide group coverage, obviously, but we do have an option for individuals who own their own business, who are looking for quality, affordable health insurance options. So this flyer, this fact sheet, actually, it's a good piece to have around. Very quickly, I'd like to update folks on our assister training for 2023. It's currently under development. We are working through both the refresher training and the new assister training here at Pennie. Again, when that is ready to launch, we'll send out notifications to folks. But an important thing to keep in mind is the assister resource page will have those links and those updates available for our assisters as soon as the training and the training request can be submitted for 2023. Couple highlights. Our training this year for assisters is going to be more Pennsylvania centric, more specific to Pennie. Also, we've created some new video content for our platform and to help assisters and enrollment entity managers better engage our platform. Also, our assister training here at Pennie is free. The blackout period for this year's assister training will be on August 29th. So if you are an assister or a new assister, towards the end of the month, we will black out the training so that we can begin the new 2023 training in mid-September. And again, we will be providing you with updates as training becomes available, and we'll be here to help. Speaking of help, there are some new resources for assisters, one of which I had mentioned earlier, and that's our guide for new assisters to navigate the registration process with the Pennsylvania Insurance Department. Again, I cannot thank Cognosante and Mendoza Group enough for their work on this. It is a tremendous resource for new assisters here in Pennsylvania. And it's something that, again, is available on that assister resource page. Right now, I would like to turn things over to my colleague, Hannah Turner. And Hannah's got a lot of great updates to share with us, not only from a broker training perspective, but from an operational perspective. And she's also going to spend some time today talking with us about individuals transitioning from Pennie to Medicare. So with that being said, thank you again, folks. And Hannah, please.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Going on the next slide. So Scott talked a little bit about the 2023 assister training. Wanted to also give you an update on the 2023 broker training. That training is coming very soon. It will be available later this month. Go to the next slide, please. We spent a lot of time doing a full update and refresh of the broker training for 2023. There are still 2 courses, one for new brokers and then one for recertified brokers. So there are, some of the updates that we made were, across policy updates, different updates to operational content. And we do have a new module that we reworked to focus on health equity, which of course is one of Pennie's strategic goals. So you'll see a new module called Serving Historically Marginalized and Underserved Populations in Pennsylvania. Really excited about that. Inside the broker training courses, you will also receive the new logo training and the trademark agreement that is required for brokers to be able to use before broker can use the new broker Pennie certified broker logo that Scott mentioned earlier. One thing we've done a little bit differently this year was splitting out the broker portal system training module so that it shortens it because you'll be able to pick your path for the broker portal system training component. You'll be able to either take the agency manager training or the broker training. So depending upon your user role, you'll be able to pick the appropriate one for you and go down that path. So additionally, we have, of course, things that are required to do annually, like privacy and security training, etc. So all the courses are still available with no cost. We are using the same platform that we migrated to last year, which is the Trained PA platform. As a reminder, we do allow new brokers can become certified at any point in the year. When they complete the 2023 broker training, that will make their certification eligible through 12/31/2023. Next slide, and we'll talk about recertifying. So for current Pennie certified brokers, you'll need to complete the 2023 recertification by the deadline in order to extend your Pennie certified broker status through 12/31/2023. The recertification course is it has the same number of modules as the new broker training, but the content is more streamlined and really focused on the key areas that, as a recertifying broker, you need to focus that training on. So things that are new or updated policies. There's definitely some policies that we'll be refreshing on annually, like some really core things like some of the eligibility rules. Policies related to strategic goals and legally required content, like I discussed earlier. So the deadline for 2023 broker recertification is October 31st. When this goes live later this month, all the current certified brokers will receive an email notice, which includes, how to get into the recertification training. Once you complete the training, it takes about 5 to 7 business days before you will see any updates in your account. That's because we do need to just review your information, verify that you're eligible for recertification and that your license is in good standing. But once that's approved, you'll actually see your certification date update in your broker portal, and that's how you know everything is, done and completed. Important note though about recertification: if you do not complete recertification by the deadline, then your broker certification will end on 12/31 of this year, and all your customers will be de-designated. You certainly, once a broker has been decertified, they're welcome to come back in the future, but that will require completing the new broker training, and we don't restore your previous book of business if you come back and get certified again. So important to know, we'll be sending out reminders as we get closer to recertification deadlines, but wanted to make sure everybody's fully aware of that. So keep an eye out for that coming later this month, and we'll be doing reminders, of course, as well as we get closer. Okay, go ahead, Scott, next section here. So we've got a few operational updates to go through today. First one is hot off the presses. So last month's work group, in the July work group, we talked about the new annual income verification process. And the update today is that the notices are going out to customers, I said by Monday, but they actually went out overnight last night. So very quick recap: the Aiv process is where we do a mid-year check of people's income against the federal data sources to make sure that the people are receiving the right amount of financial assistance. So when they get the notice, it will be a new DMI that potentially, so if there was a discrepancy with the trusted data sources, they'll get a DMI notice. This is one of those shorter DMI reasonable opportunity periods, so it's only 30 days. However, unlike the PDM process a few months ago, if you don't resolve the Aiv DMIs, there's not any adverse action taken. But we really do still want people to take the Aiv DMIs as an opportunity to go back and review their income on their application and to make sure that they're receiving the right amount of APTC for the year. We don't want people to have a surprise of any potential tax liabilities at the end of the year. And remember, way that Pennie calculates APTC, we calculate it for the whole year. So if someone does need to change their income, it's really important that they do that as early as possible in the year so that we can make any adjustments to the APTC to try to make sure that across the year, on an annual basis, they're not receiving too much APTC. If you wait too late in the year, you may have already received too much APTC at that point, and there's nothing that we can do to kind of take that back. So if you have questions about the Aiv process, go back to the July 2022 work group and check that out. Okay, next one is also an update on a topic we've talked about in a previous work group. This is a few months back. So we wanted to talk about eligibility for refugees and asylum seekers. So as we know, to be eligible for Pennie, folks can be a U.S. citizen, a national, or someone who is lawfully present. And that lawfully present term includes immigrants with a very wide range of statuses. Some of those statuses are temporary, some are permanent, and honestly, they're just very complex rules, and they're often changing. So while very recently, the U.S. introduced a new passport code for Ukrainian refugees. It's this UHP code. So back in April, we talked about, in particular, eligibility around Afghans and Ukrainians under some of the refugee and asylum seeking rules. So I wanted to call out that there are some constant changing rules for these folks. So we don't expect you to be experts on all of these immigration rules, but it's really important that when customers have, complex immigration statuses, that you know at least to go check out different resources to, help them understand whether they are eligible for coverage through Pennie or not. We do have FAQs on immigration statuses that we update pretty regularly. And of course, you can always call Pennie customer service with any questions. I do recommend, for those who didn't see it before, the April 2020 Workgroup, the section on eligibility for non-citizens is really helpful. So you can always go back and check that out. Okay, next one in our operations update section. So loss of minimum essential coverage SEPs. This is probably one of the more common SEP reasons that we see customers enrolling through. And we want to take an opportunity to just do a refresher on this. We've had some questions, and it's just worth recapping with everyone, especially because there's a few things that are sort of unique about the loss of MEC SEP. So first of all, availability is wide. It is for anyone who might be currently enrolled through Pennie. It could also be people who are not currently enrolled through Pennie. So not pretty wide range of availability there. The duration of the SEP, however, is definitely a bit unique. It is one of the few SEPs that a customer can report in advance of the event date. There's very, very few life events that someone can report in advance of the event. Loss of MEC is one, and moving is basically the other. So a customer can report it up to 60 days before or 60 days after the event. So that does mean that the coverage start dates will depend upon whether someone's shopping before their event date being when they lose their coverage, or after. So if they're shopping before the event date, before they lose their coverage, then the coverage start date they'll receive is the first of the month after the event. And then if they're shopping after the event, then it'll be the normal rules that you're used to for most SEPs. Coverage starts the first of the month after shopping. In terms of documentation requirements, loss of MEC is self-attested, so documentation is not required prior to enrolling. If you don't have the SEP quick reference chart bookmarked, you absolutely should. It's a great summary of all of the different SEPs and all these different rules around them. So let's talk, go ahead to the next slide. We'll talk a bit more about scenarios where people are eligible for loss of MEC SEPs and where people are not eligible. So eligible scenarios. These are things like involuntary loss of ESI. So someone loses their job, or occasionally get someone who maybe was eligible, they change from full-time to part-time, but part-time employees are no longer eligible, so they lose their eligibility for that employer coverage. Those folks are eligible for a loss of MEC SEP. There is a Cobra scenario where they could be eligible, so they could exhaust their Cobra coverage. And in a scenario where the employer had been paying for someone's Cobra coverage, if the employer stops paying for Cobra, that is also a scenario that would make someone eligible for loss of MEC. And then, of course, things losing Medicaid or CHIP, those are also loss of MEC eligible scenarios. Scenarios where someone is not eligible for a loss of MEC SEP. First one there is, I think, one that everyone should know, right? This is termination of coverage due to non-payment of premiums. And that includes termination of coverage that coverage could be through Pennie, it could be somewhere else. But if the coverage ended because someone did not pay their premiums, they are not eligible for a loss of MEC SEP. For the Cobra folks enrolled in Cobra, if they voluntarily terminate their Cobra coverage before they've exhausted their maximum duration, they're not eligible for loss of MEC SEP. And if they terminate their Cobra coverage because of non-payment of premium, similar to the other non-pay term scenarios, that is not eligible for loss of MEC. And then one that we've been getting some questions about and want to make sure that's clear for everyone is when someone terminates their coverage through an exchange because their they lose their eligibility because their DMI expired. That is not an eligible loss of MEC SEP. So customer maybe had a Social Security DMI. They got their 90-day reasonable opportunity period. If they don't resolve that Social Security DMI by the end of that reasonable opportunity period, the adverse action is that person's coverage will be terminated. That is not eligible as a loss of MEC SEP. So those folks who lose their coverage because their DMI expired can either enroll when open enrollment happens, or it can enroll if they have some other life event, not a loss of MEC. Okay. So let's talk about why this is important. Like, what happens if a customer attests to that loss of MEC SEP, but we later find out that they were not eligible? So first, even though the SEP is self-attested and we don't require documentation in advance, Pennie can request documentation to verify someone's eligibility after they've enrolled. So even when that documentation was not initially required. And then if we determine that someone who attested to being eligible for an SEP is not actually eligible for that SEP, there's a range of consequences that they could face, and wide range, everything from termination of their coverage, potential for retroactive cancellation of their coverage, and then of course there's always legal consequences such as perjury, and obviously these are going to vary based on the facts and circumstances, but there are consequences to customers if they attest to an SEP that they're not eligible for. So it is really important that as you're helping folks that you really do help them understand whether they are in one of those eligible scenarios or not eligible scenarios. And hopefully this is not happening, but of course, if a customer knowingly lied on their application, maybe they say their sister or their broker told them to just report loss of MEC, even though they know they weren't eligible, that could also mean consequences for an assistor or broker, because everything you submit through Pennie is under penalty of perjury. And so, there are potential consequences there as well. So want to make sure that everyone does understand these scenarios. If you have any questions and you're not sure about whether someone's scenario is eligible for the loss of MEC SEP or not, please contact Pennie customer service and they can help you, navigate those different scenarios to be sure that you understand. Okay. So let's move on to sort of the big topic here at the end about transitioning from Pennie to Medicare. So we've gotten a lot of questions throughout time over this, and so I thought it'd be good to spend a little bit of time talking about this. And for purposes of what we're going to talk about today, just kind of keeping this sort of narrowly focused about folks who are approaching age 65 and may become eligible for Medicare. So we'll talk about kind of how that might impact their coverage through Pennie and what actions they may need to take. And then my disclaimers before we move forward. We're just going to keep this very simple. We're talking about the most common scenarios where someone's becoming eligible for Medicare, means that we're talking about age-based Medicare with premium-free Part A. So in general, the same rules are going to apply when you have other types of Medicare, as long as it's premium-free Part A. We will at the end just do a brief reminder about what happens for the non-premium free folks. So we're just going to keep that simple. Medicare can get obviously very complicated. So let's talk about these folks who are approaching 65 and are going to become eligible for that premium free Medicare. Next slide. So why does someone's eligibility for Medicare impact their coverage through Pennie? Well, because eligibility for financial assistance, to be eligible for financial assistance, you cannot be eligible for other minimum essential coverage, and premium-free Medicare Part A is MEC. Even if someone doesn't sign up for B or anything else like that, that premium-free Part A is MEC. So these folks, when they become eligible for Medicare, are going to be losing their eligibility for financial assistance through Pennie. So let's talk about the different ways that Pennie might know that someone is eligible for Medicare. So there's 4 different ways. We'll go into each one in detail here on the next slide. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So one way that Pennie knows sort of indirectly that someone might be eligible for Medicare is that the person is simply just not seeking coverage through Pennie. So the person might be a member of a tax household where other people are seeking coverage through Pennie, but that person who is eligible for Medicare is listed as not seeking coverage. There could be a lot of reasons why that person might not be seeking coverage, but eligibility for Medicare is one of those potential reasons. Next slide. So there is, however, a specific way that a customer can tell us that they are eligible for Medicare. So if a customer is seeking coverage, there are questions later on, and I took a screenshot of the application itself where it's in the second to last section of additional information. There's a question about other health coverage. So if someone is eligible for Medicare, they can report that there. You'll see if you answer yes, that you're eligible for other coverage, you do receive a bunch of options, Medicare being one of those. Someone reports that, then they will be found ineligible for financial assistance because they're eligible for Medicare. Now, these first two scenarios talk about a person sort of proactively telling us, Pennie, that they are eligible for Medicare. There's a couple of ways that Pennie can might know that someone is eligible for Medicare when the customer doesn't directly report it to us. So let's go to those next. So this is scenario number 3. Pennie checks your trusted data, these federal trusted data sources, every time someone submits an eligibility application. So whether they're applying for the first time, applying for an SCP, updating their address, those are submitting eligibility applications. And whenever someone does that, we do have to check the federal data hub to compare the application information against the data hub services, and we generate a DMI if there's any inconsistencies. We don't have to go through all the details of DMIs. We did a whole long section about DMIs in our May work group, so definitely can go back to that. But if someone was eligible for Medicare, that is one of the things that we do check when we ping the federal data hub. And if we get the person reports on their application that they are not eligible for Medicare, but the federal hub tells us they are, then we generate a non-ESI MEC DMI. And I apologize for the acronyms. This is one of the worst ones I think that we have. So non-ESI means non-employer sponsored insurance, MEC, minimum essential coverage, DMI, data matching issue. And as with all other DMIs, they get 90-day reasonable opportunity period. If that Medicare-related DMI is not resolved at the end of the reasonable opportunity period, the customer will be disenrolled for coverage through Pennie at the end of the month after that ROP expired. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So there are other times that we check data sources beyond just when someone submits their application, and periodic data matching, which we did earlier this spring, is one of those times that we do check for a particular Medicare. So the PDM process, same type of thing. We check the data hub. If we find someone is eligible for Medicare for the data hub, we generate a DMI. This is a PDM related DMI, so it's a little bit of a shorter reasonable opportunity period. They only get 30 days. And if they don't resolve by the end of that 30-day reasonable opportunity period, then we will terminate their coverage at the end of the month after that reasonable opportunity period. So both these last two situations, there are ways that Pennie will eventually find out that someone is eligible for Medicare. But in both of those scenarios, you see that, we find out, based on timing of either someone submitting an application or these periodic processes that we have. And the termination of their coverage through Pennie is prospective. So in both of those scenarios, the person could have been eligible for Medicare for a little while and we didn't know, and that could result in them having overlapping coverage. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So let's talk about the ideal way for someone to transition to Medicare. Since Pennie's not notified when a customer becomes eligible for Medicare. It really is up to the customer to notify us. And so what a customer should do if they are currently enrolled through Pennie and they become eligible for Medicare, they should request termination of coverage, their coverage through Pennie, before their Medicare start date. It is very important. It is before the Medicare start date. If the customer, they forget to terminate their Pennie coverage, or they didn't realize they needed to do that, then whenever they eventually do request that termination, that will terminate their coverage, but it will be a prospective termination. So it'll be the end of the month in which they submit that request. We cannot retroactively terminate their coverage. So it's really important that they recognize that as part of the process for becoming eligible for Medicare. They need to remember they also need to proactively terminate their coverage through Pennie. And just a note, when we talk about age-based Medicare, you can't even wait till someone's birthday, because Medicare could start even the beginning of the month in which they turn 65. So it is important that we sort of get in front of people and make sure that they're aware of this before they even actually turn 65. So let's talk about 3 different ways that you can request the termination of coverage through Pennie when in these scenarios where someone's transitioning to Medicare. So we'll go through each one in detail. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So in the first scenario, this is probably the easiest scenario, where if, let's say you have a policy, let's say I'm the person who's transitioning to Medicare and I'm the only one enrolled on the policy through Pennie, then it's really simple. You can just go into the customer's portal and go to My Enrollments and, you know, click the Disenroll from Health Plan button. When you do that, you will get some options for termination dates. They are all prospective termination dates, still no retroactive options, but you could choose up to 3 months in advance. So if I went in today, I could term my coverage as late as October 31st using this method. Again, this method should only be used if if the only people enrolled on the policy are the people enrolling in Medicare. But that's not always the case. So sometimes the case, the family situation is mixed, right? Where you have some folks who need to continue their coverage through Pennie while others are transitioning to Medicare. So let's talk about those next. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So if you have someone else on the application who needs to continue their coverage, then you need to go about terming the person's coverage in a little bit of a different way. So let's say it's me and my spouse. I'm the one becoming eligible for Medicare, so I'm the only one I need to disenroll myself, but my spouse is not yet eligible for Medicare and they need to continue their coverage through Pennie. The way I would go about terming that coverage would be to go in and edit my eligibility application and change my information from seeking coverage to no longer seeking coverage. When we submit that eligibility application, then my coverage will be terminated. I will be disenrolled from the plan at the end of the month. My spouse will continue on to enrolled with no impact whatsoever. Important note here, though, when you do that, you don't get a choice of future effective dates. The update to the eligibility application where you say you're not seeking coverage, that's going to take effect at the end of the current month. So depending on when you're doing this process, that may or may not work. There is, however, a way for you to disenroll someone with a future end date. So that is item 3. And that's really simple. You have to call Pennie customer service. So if it's me and my spouse, I want to disenroll myself, but I want coverage to end October 31st, then I need to call Pennie customer service, and they will help and allow me to disenroll with that future end date for my coverage and let my spouse continue on the Pennie coverage uninterrupted. Okay. You can always call Pennie customer service in any of these scenarios, but that one in particular is the only way to do it is to call. Okay, so let's do some FAQs here. We still have some time. So can an individual have coverage through Pennie while being eligible for Medicare? Simple answer is yes. Definitely, we have folks who are eligible for Medicare who enroll in dental coverage through Pennie. That's totally fine. Dental coverage for adults is not eligible for financial assistance anyways. So we do definitely see folks doing that. On the medical side, it's very rare, but technically, yes, we will allow someone to enroll in medical without financial assistance, even if they're eligible for Medicare. And I say this is rare. It is not right for most people. Almost everyone who's got eligible for premium-free Part A is not going to be wanting to enroll in full premium coverage through Pennie. If you do have one of those rare scenarios, there is a way to do it. You would say that you're seeking coverage and then report that Medicare eligibility in that other healthcare coverage section that we showed towards the beginning of the section. And that would allow the person to enroll in medical coverage at full cost because of their eligibility for Medicare. But it's very rare. You will hardly need this, but it is potentially available for the medical side. Definitely enroll for dental. I think dental coverage through Pennie is a great option for folks who have Medicare. So I said we would come back and talk about people who are eligible for Medicare Part A, but with premium. So the non-premium free. A little bit awkward way to think of it, but this is not the majority of folks. Most folks are going to be eligible for premium free, but there are scenarios where someone would be only eligible with a premium because if you Part A with a premium, that's not MEC. So therefore, those folks are eligible for financial assistance through Pennie. They could enroll with APTC, CSR, etc., even if they are eligible for the Part A because that Part A has a premium associated with it. Okay. Don't forget about those folks. They are out there, the folks that have a Part A premium. Okay. Sorry, Scott. Go ahead, next slide. So does Pennie send any notices or communications to folks who are approaching Medicare eligibility? We did start recently doing some additional email and outbound call campaigns to current Pennie enrollees who are approaching their 65th birthday. And so we've got an excerpt of that email campaign. The call campaign has similar talking points. The purpose is to kind of be sure to remind folks as they are starting to think about their eligibility for Medicare, remind them that they need to also terminate their Pennie coverage before their Medicare starts if they want to avoid that dual coverage situation. So we have FAQs on this that we send out that you can access to. We also make sure they know they can access the resources through Pennsylvania's Medicare Education Decision Insight. The PA Medi program is through the Department of Aging and has resources for any Pennsylvanians who have any questions about Medicare. So they can also help folks understand, a sometimes complicated process. Okay. So that's new. We're really excited about it. It's going well. We're getting some good reactions to that. So we're hoping that that's going to help also make sure that people do kind of keep that in mind and are terminating their Pennie coverage in time and to avoid that duplicate coverage. Okay, next slide. So there is one flavor of these disenrollment for Medicare scenarios that we want to make sure that you are aware of. So in my previous example where I was disenrolling but my spouse needed to keep coverage, if I'm the current subscriber on our coverage through Pennie, when I disenroll, I as a subscriber disenroll, my spouse continues coverage, but you can't have a policy without a subscriber. So that has operational impacts. So what will happen in that scenario is the subscriber disenrolls, the remaining family members actually get enrolled onto a new policy, and I'm going to kind of use that in quotes, that policy is a continuation of their coverage, but there's no re-rating, so they're not disrupted in that sense, but it is a new policy because you have to have a new subscriber. And typically the spouse becomes the new subscriber. There's all sorts of complicated rules we don't need to go into about determining who would be the subscriber if the spouse is not there. But most of the scenarios we're looking at is going to be the spouse. So it's continuous coverage, no re-rating. But creating a new policy in the new subscriber often means processes that the insurers have to go through as well, that often result in new member IDs. So a new subscriber typically means a new member ID. New member IDs could mean potential for having to set up new member portals at the insurers because you have a new subscriber. Sometimes that new member ID might mean that if person might have to set up their auto pay directly with the insurer under that new member ID number. I tell you that not to say that the insurers have these processes down and really have streamlined them to make it seamless for customers, but a new member ID has impacts, right? They need to start using that new member ID when they go to seek services because the old member ID won't be active anymore. So what I think the reason this is really important to talk about is in these transition to Medicare scenarios, if that subscriber is the one who is transitioning to Medicare and disenrolling, it's important that you make sure that the family members know that they are likely to get new member ID cards, and they need to be on the lookout for those coming from their insurer, and to be on the lookout for other communications from their insurers on things like if they need to set up a new member portal, auto pay, whatever other types of things might need to happen, just so that they don't get surprised and think that their coverage is no longer active because they're using an old member ID. Okay, I think that is the last on the transition to Medicare section. So I think, Scott, we are good for the questions.
Sure, Hannah, and thank you again so much. That was really, really good information. I see we do have a couple questions here in the chat that are related to different topics, but one that I wanted to sort of lead in with was something that you had just mentioned with regard to Pennie's dental programs being a good option for individuals who are currently under Medicare. Are there any additional details that folks need to be aware of about that, or is it pretty straightforward? Folks on Medicare are welcome to shop for dental at Pennie.
Yeah, I mean, the application process, you just need to make sure that you say that you're seeking coverage. You should indicate that you're eligible for Medicare in that other healthcare coverage section, but as long as you're otherwise eligible for the exchange, right? You meet the lawful presence or citizenship rules and other things, then you'll be found eligible and able to shop for QHP or dental. And when you go into plan shopping, whether you're in this situation or any other, you will see sort of at the top of the plan shopping pages, the health and dental tabs. So anyone can enroll in both or just dental even. So that applies to enrolling in just dental, probably applies mostly to folks like those who are enrolled in Medicare, but it could also be other folks. Scott, you mentioned earlier, if talking about people who have coverage through small businesses or work for small businesses, they might have access to medical through their small business, but not access to dental. So there's people who have other scenarios where they have other coverage and only need dental. They can enroll through Pennie for dental coverage only.
That is fantastic. And I see in the chat, like I said, we have a few questions. The first question was actually from Autumn, and it looks like you're replying to that right now, Hannah, so thank you. There was also a question that came up anonymously that states if a consumer currently has Cobra, but now qualifies for Medicaid, can they cancel their Cobra and enroll into Medicaid without being in an open enrollment period? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And the key thing here is we're talking about someone who becomes eligible for Medicaid. So remember that Medicaid and CHIP don't have people can enroll in Medicaid or CHIP at any time. It is not limited just to an open enrollment period. So while, right now, to enroll in coverage through Pennie, you need to have a special enrollment period. But to enroll in coverage through Medicaid or CHIP, if someone people don't need to have that qualifying life event. They wouldn't need anything special to be able to enroll in Medicaid in that situation.
Excellent. Well, we had a question come in that was related to an assister who was viewing notifications and tickets in their assister portal, actually the customer's portal by way of the assister portal. And they had mentioned that that they used to be able to view tickets and responses sent from Pennie, but now this has been deactivated in customer accounts. Is that something that you happen to have some insights on?
Sure. Yeah, you won't. I think what you were probably looking at previously was under the My Tickets part of the customer portal, and there will be sort of some replies back and forth in that section. Those communications back and forth are still shared, but they're actually in the inbox now. So if you go under the My Inbox, I can't remember off the top of my head what the subject line looks like, but it'll reference that ticket number. So for example, if you submitted some documents for a DMI and the representative who's reviewing that has questions or needs you to re-upload a certain file because it wasn't, it was fuzzy, or you missed, needed to also update income for other people in the household, whatever it might be, they'll still be sending those communications to you, but it'll be under the inbox, and you'll see like an important message regarding ticket such and such, and that's where you'll see those communications.
And another important thing, Hannah, that and I appreciate you reminding us about that inbox on the customer portal, specifically because there have been questions that have come in from brokers and assisters alike with regard to being able to, view a repository of sorts for those types of customer communications from Pennie. And the inbox is, it's a really nice feature. Not only are those correspondence, logged there, date, time stamped, they're kept there and can be referenced to, if the customer has additional issues that require some research, that information is there. So, all right. Folks, it looks like we've come up on time. Again, please know that we will download the chat. We will post our responses as well as the recording of this session to our Pennie Community Workgroup page. Thank you again so much for the privilege of your time. Please be safe. Have a peaceful day.